This is more a today my daughter FU'd, but I guess I'll take some responsibility. My daughter, 14.5, and I were sitting at a red light heading home. I had my window down, just waiting for the light to turn, listening to music, etc. I see something moving and look in my side mirror and see my husband has come up behind us and he's waving. I say, "Oh hey, there's your dad," and I blow him a kiss toward the side mirror so he can see. My husband drives a black sports car, and I drive a lifted Jeep Wrangler. I guess because I blew a kiss towards the side mirror she thought he was pulled up next to us in the next lane. In her defense there was a black car next to us, and because we were in a vehicle much higher than the car next to us, she could only see the roof from the passenger seat, and the cars were similar. So, she unbuckles really quick and pushes herself up in the console, across me, leans out the window and starts making faces, and dancing to the music so he could see her, but I follow her line of sight and notice she's doing it to the car next to us. So I say, what are you doing?" She says, "Just goofing off at dad," and she continues. Finally I say, "That's not your dad, big shoots. Your dad is behind us." Y'all. I have never seen someone's face color drain that fast in my life. She flicks her attention to the side mirror and her dad waves, and then I've never seen someone's face get that red in my life. She's typically a really goofy kid, always doing something crazy, making people laugh, etc., but she was so embarrassed. I literally almost passed out at the wheel, I was laughing so hard. I have super dark tints, so she immediately rolled up my window and slunk down in the seat, and was half laughing hysterically and half having a panic attack. She kept asking if the person next to us saw her. She was tomato red for 20 minutes. It was the most wholesome and funny thing I've seen in a while, and I just had to share it in hopes someone else can laugh and share in her horror as well. TL, Doctor, I told my daughter I saw her dad in traffic. She mistook a stranger's car for his, started making faces at him and doing over-exaggerated dances, until I tell her that's not her dad's car and she almost dies of embarrassment. Edit, I said 14.5 just for effect. I'm not a weirdo parent. She's darn near driving age and she's the one usually embarrassed by her parents, not doing something embarrassing herself like that. Chill. When finishing up my degree in criminal justice we had to learn about how the justice system works and how sometimes it doesn't. For about 2 weeks we studied a case from the early 90s of a woman that had killed her husband. Because the case is public record and a very interesting read, look up Betty Freeberg 1993. The setting was small-town Iowa and the husband was the town drunk. Everyone in town knew him for a drunk, a brawler, a womanizer and overall just a bad person. His wife was the stay-at-home mom as she wasn't allowed to work or leave the house aside from get groceries. He would go home, beat her and violate her sexuality, and the cycle would go on and the whole town knew. Neighbors were a quarter-mile down the road but still would call the police when they heard noises. It was well documented, and because he was never a threat to their daughter the police did nothing aside from take him to jail like a revolving door. Each time he got out he'd beat her up again. Their daughter was away at college but came home for Thanksgiving. While the father was at work the daughter told the mother that her father had violated her sexuality and that she had even had an abortion because of it. This was the breaking point for the mother. She got her revenge 100-fold. When daughter went back to school after the holidays and husband came home she killed him with his gun at the kitchen table. The table is important because it was a big farm table used for chopping up deer and other livestock. Doing the butchering was her job and she was good at it. If I could find the case report, it has pictures of the table and clear marks of chopping. She chopped up her husband and scattered his body over neighboring farms, fed what she could to her livestock and cleaned up. Months went by and winter came and left. Police investigating his disappearance even questioned her while sitting at the table drinking coffee. She explained the marks on the table by explaining that she butchered her own meat and showed the officers her deep freeze. The investigation went on for months until finally a neighbor's dog brought back a body part. They identified it as belonging to him and she was arrested on the spot. She pleaded not guilty and refused any offers. It went to trial and 12 of her peers judged her not guilty due to extenuating circumstances. She confessed to the crime, explained why she did it and how, and that she had no real choice because no one was going to help her. The farm was hers and she refused to give it up as it had been her family's home. She was let go entirely for the murder charge. The next week we had Betty as a speaker to the class to discuss the case and she was awesome. At the time she ironically sold dismemberment insurance for Aflac. Betty, if you ever read this, know you're seen as a figurehead for battered women and you pulled off the best revenge I have ever been able to study. A little background, I recently got out of a very abusive relationship, and have since cut ties completely. I haven't yet had a good opportunity to be petty about it, but oh, how the gods graced me tonight. I got a notification that the VPN we shared was charged to my bank account. I had completely forgotten about it, and suddenly inspiration struck. I basically said, cool, I paid for it, it's mine. Side note, I've always been the one to pay for it because I fully supported both of us while he played video games all day. So I go into the account and change all the information. This means it will no longer work at all for him, so say goodbye to that sweet private internet access you've been enjoying on my dime. I know it's small and petty, but it feels so good to get back at him in a way I know won't actually hurt anyone. So some background info, I take around 1 hour to reach home from school, and I joined some club which has some weird rules, but that's not important to the story today. On to the story. So my teacher released us late from school, and I had around 15 minutes to get home in order to join the online call. Yes, we have school but no meeting in my country, weird. I texted the organizers about me having to be late, and we came to the agreement that I would join the call as I walked home. When I joined the call, I immediately heard the organizers say on your camera. Fine. Part 1 of malicious compliance complete. I turned on my camera and allowed the entire call to see the beautiful sky, followed by raindrops slowly falling down. But that wasn't even the funniest part. So moving on, I got on the public transport. It's a train, which, disclaimer, has really loud announcements and sounds and background noises essentially. For some reason the organizers believed it was an amazing idea to ask someone who is on their way home to turn on their microphone, on public transport. Cue malicious compliance. I turned on my microphone and walked closer to the speaker things inside the train, letting the beautiful noises blast into the call and interrupt whoever was speaking. According to one of my friends who were already in the call, almost nothing could be heard by the rest of the people in the call, other than the next stop, /______. The organizers ended up having me turn off my mic, and yes, that's my malicious compliance. Not as havoc-wreaking as many others in this sub, but hey. It was satisfying. Immediately upon learning my place of work was permanently closed down, I was sad to say goodbye to all of my co-workers. This wasn't so bad as I knew I would stay in touch with my BFFs. What I did not realize until later on is that we did not get the opportunity to say our goodbyes, see you later, or I will be working here to our regulars. As many of you know, you develop a relationship with them. I have found myself wondering how they are. One man recently lost his wife. They were both regulars, but he was still coming in. He was not in very good health, and I believe his time will come soon. Plus the many others who came in on a weekly or almost daily basis that we developed professional but personal relationships with. Usually you put in your 2 weeks notice, and are able to inform them that you are switching jobs or leaving the industry altogether. This time around for some of us it just ended, and we have been left without a sense of closure to a large part of our lives. I have since left the field, and am now a naturalist at a state park. Maybe I will see some of them in passing, but that is unlikely. Good luck identifying people in mask around town anyway. Notes: I know this is usually a place for servers to vent, but I felt this is a storyline that is generally left out here. I work for a place where my primary assignment is not IT, however, because of my background in IT and the lack of IT actually showing up most times, I am usually called upon for these services. Well, this happened a few days ago. I arrived for work to see an employee who usually works at another building across town. I rarely see him, so I was surprised that he was there. He is known for his lack of knowledge when it comes to techie anything. So, he is sitting in the back room, where we have a system set up for anyone in the company to use if they decide to work back there for whatever reason. So, he is sitting there, tapping away at the keyboard. I notice he is on the web looking stuff up for research for an upcoming presentation he is giving. I sit down at the other end of the table, get out my laptop and start working. Well, about 5 minutes goes by, he looks at me and says, "I think we have a major problem with this computer." I ask him what the issue is. He explains, "Well, anything I am saving is not saving to my network drive, it is saving to Amanda's network drive." I look at him, and ask, "Well, did you sign it as your?" He says, "No, it was signed in already and shows Amanda's name." So, I tell him, "Yes, Steve, you have to log out of her profile since she forgot to log out, and you have to log in as you." He looks at me all confused and says, "That makes no sense to me, I am the one using the computer now, it should save stuff to my network drive." I explain that since it is still signed in under Amanda's login, that is where anything saved will go to, and again tell him to log out and sign in under him. He is still confused, but logs out of the current profile, logs in under him and tries it again. Well, what do you know, it saves it to his network drive and now shows his name. I then again explained to him that in order to see his network drive when he uses the system he needs to log in as him. He states again that he does not understand what that is. He said all he knows is that it should know he is using the computer when he sits down to it. I did not explain anything further. I just grabbed my laptop and went to work somewhere else, wishing him a great day on the way out. Some background: I have been selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards on eBay for about 2 years now, and I have seen a few creative scams. Today, however, I found a complete moron. I woke up this morning to an offer on one of my more expensive cards, $260, for the original asking price, which is kind of weird. The offer also came with a message from the buyer with his phone number and he said he had a few questions. This is a bit unusual, as he could just private message me the questions on eBay. I didn't think too much of it and texted his number. He responded up pretty quickly and said that he had been having issues with eBay and that's why he had to text me. He asked for usual stuff, such as the condition of the card and for pictures of it. I gave him this and he said he would pay me the asking price and asked for my PayPal. I had begun to have some suspicions, but this is what really alerted me. I have him the PayPal email, and right after he asked if he could give me $200 extra to add a $200 eBay gift card to his purchase. This is quite a common scam, so I knew how to handle it. I told him that I can't do that. He replied angrily that he was a doctor working in a hospital to fight COVID and he needed this for a birthday gift, all in broken English. Of course, I tried calling his number just to be sure it was fake and sure enough, it said that the number was not active. This is where I get my small revenge. I saw that he had made purchases on his account, so he must have some sort of payment method linked to it. I went back to the offer that he made for $260 and accepted it. He is now roped into paying for my card and won't get his free gift card. Eons ago, I was expecting my second child when I realized that my driver's license would expire pretty close to my due date. At the time, and the rules may be different now, one could renew between 30 days before expiration and 7 days after, to avoid penalties. And I realized that early was better, unless I wanted to arrange childcare for a toddler and a newborn at the end of that window. So, on the first day I could go in without paying an extra fee for a renewal, which turned out to be 6 days before the baby got here. I arranged for my brother to keep his nephew for a minute, and lumbered into the license renewal office. My heart sank a bit, because the lady staffing the desk was the same one who had failed me on my first driving exam. She was known to be a stickler for every rule. And I managed to get my 1975 Cadillac sedan DeVille into the parallel parking space, but I knocked down the cones getting it out. But okay, today isn't a road test. So here we are at the counter. We're just making sure my information is correct. Show her my current license and some other identifying document? Check. I give her my light bill to prove my physical address. Check. Quick eye exam to verify that I don't need vision correction? Check. Verifying physical description? Height, hair color, eye color. No problem. She asked for my weight. And I hesitated noticeably. I knew good and well how much I weighed. I was 9 months pregnant, and had gained way too much, and was trying to figure out how much I could plausibly subtract. I just didn't really want a 2 as the first digit. She noticed my hesitation, glanced up and down, and said, "Oh, we'll just put down your old weight." Y'all, I weighed 220 or more. And that darling typed in 135 with a straight face. I learned a few years ago that she was retiring, and legit sent her a thank you for that story. Years ago, I was working at a now-defunct national chain store. An older woman, at least in her 60s, came in and wanted to make a payment on her store credit card, which can be done at any register. She handed me an envelope with her payment and account information. Which unfortunately wasn't for our company at all, but for a competing chain store, also sadly extinct, that was down the street from us. I told her I was sorry but I couldn't process her transaction as she had given me the account information for a different company. She got upset and demanded that I process her payment immediately. I repeated that I couldn't and the reason why, and she started to shout. She said that she'd been coming to this store for more than 30 years and she knew well where she was and that I had to help her because it was my job. I tried to explain again, so she demanded to see my manager. She spent the entire time waiting for him, carrying on about how terrible our service was and how she'd never been treated like this. When my manager arrived and also tried to explain to her that she was in the wrong store, she went ballistic. She started screeching like a harpy, and I have no doubt that everyone in the store heard her. The only part of her rant I understood was her demands to speak to the store manager. At that point, the same scenario played out as it had with me and my department manager. Only much louder. I went to my boss while she was screaming at the store manager and offered to run her payment over to the other store just to get her out of our hair. He just calmly shook his head and told me not to worry about her anymore. That he and I had done our jobs and had not mistreated her in any way and that we owed her nothing. I've had some pretty crappy managers in the past, but this guy was great and always had our backs. I honestly don't remember the outcome. I know that store security got involved, and I assume they escorted her out of the store, but I don't think the police were ever called. I felt bad for her because I thought that maybe she had some kind of dementia. But other than insisting we were a different company, she seemed to be in her right mind. For the most part. This morning I had to go to the bike shop for my bike needs urgent fixing on the rear transmission. Showed him my bike and he looked up the prices and I agreed on them. Then I asked if he can check the chains. Because several places I went before in the last year told me it's good for a while and doesn't need changing yet, etc. I told him that too. Then he picked up a tool, looked at it. He said it is in bad condition and should change. Completely out of curiosity I asked him to show me how this tool looks on a proper chain. He showed me that. After that, he politely asked me to leave and said he didn't want to fix my bike because I don't trust him. I apologized and said I didn't imply anything, but he didn't budge. So I left without saying anything. DL, doctor, I was being curious but the guy felt deeply insulted about me asking a stupid question. So as with many Tifu posts, this happened a few years ago when I worked at a well-known coffee shop chain. I started getting a regular customer who looked familiar, and eventually I recognized him as my former pediatrician, the one who I had seen from a baby through adolescence. He has since moved into an educational role, so I hadn't seen him in years. I would see him every few weekends, and one weekend my parents came in to visit me and they were very happy to run into him. Later, my parents remarked to me that he had known me ever since I was a few days old. In fact, he was the one who performed my circumcision. The Tifu part is that I told my wife this entire story. Of course, one weekend she comes to visit me at work and he is sitting in the cafe. I introduce them, and he goes into the whole "I've known him ever since he was a baby," at which my wife replies, "Yes, I heard you did his circumcision, a great job, might I add." The look on his face was mortification. I was embarrassed, my wife was embarrassed right after his reaction, and he had no clue what to say. I made some comment to the effect of "enjoy the rest of your coffee," and then my wife leaves the store immediately. I still had about 3 hours on my shift, and he stayed for a good hour or so longer and bade me a friendly farewell. I quit the job a few years ago, but he was still a regular after that, although we didn't really chat much. DL, doctor, my wife awkwardly praises the man who performed my circumcision 20+ years prior. My brother has always sped through interstates and highways, and my mom has an app that tells her when he does it. He almost killed me once when I was in the car, and after that I refused to ride with him. My family is at the beach for the week and we were driving behind him and his girlfriend and he started speeding, 60 in a 45. My mom started to honk her horn at him when a police officer in an unmarked car in front of him turned on his lights. I smiled inside knowing he finally got caught. My mom is curious, but we haven't gotten out of the car to interact with him yet. We'll post an update later. Edit: that was fast. $200 fine. My mom is taking his car. He got lucky. Cop told him 2 miles per hour more and it would have been $400 and a suspended license. I worked as a contract graphic designer for a large Canadian retailer that has a big cat as their logo. I had the habit of staying later to finish projects, but only charged for regular 9 to 5. As such, the supervisor and I had an unwritten agreement that I could show up a little late from time to time, since I always got the work done on time. One day, I'm coming in 25 minutes after 9 and the head of HR runs into me in the hallway. She asks if I'm just arriving to work. I tell her yes, and she immediately escorts me to the supervisor's office to rat me out. The supervisor tries to explain our agreement, but the HR manager tells me that if it happens again my contract will be terminated. From that day forward I started counting all my overtime and billing them for it. When asked why I was suddenly billing at a higher rate by management, I explained to them what had happened. A few weeks later I was offered a better job elsewhere, and decided I would show up late the next day. The HR manager saw me get there late and started stomping over. As she arrived, I handed her my resignation letter and walked out. I found out later that they ended up needing to hire 2 designers to keep up with the pace that I was keeping on my own. DLDR, supervisor and I have unwritten agreement that I can show up late because I stay late. HR manager catches me coming in late and threatens to fire me. I start billing them for all my overtime that I wasn't billing them for prior to that encounter. I'm a courtroom assistant in a Southeast Asian country. I'd rather not get much further than that on identifying information. We do both security and practical assistance like moving displays, escorting juries, and some ceremonial stuff as well. This was the sentencing of an evil flip on several high crime offenses, similar to what a capital offense may be in America. Here high crime is the level above criminal offense, or felony for the rest of the world. He stalked, kidnapped, raped, and murdered a locally famous and growing pop artist who was pregnant. He was charged with stalking, high crime kidnapping, high crime rape, high crime murder, high crime fetal homicide, and a bunch of other stuff. Evil Flip, as he will be referred to from here on out, was on suicide precautions as he made threats against his own life in prison, so he was in spiffy paper clothes. We were well into victim impact statements. The victim had a large family and there were something like 35 individuals addressing the court. We're something like 28 statements into it. Next up was Granddad. These are always really emotional, families are always really upset for good reason. But this 80-plus old guy is the worst I can remember. He was crying, breathing heavily, shaking, the entire sentencing. He was called to make his statement, starts walking up, about past the counsel table. He then turns, tackles the attorneys and Evil Flip. He didn't get much in on the Evil Flip, maybe a kick and 2 punches before 15 of us pile up on him. He was taken into custody, and it quickly became apparent that Evil Flip got what was coming. Evil Flip is screaming and gagging for about 20 seconds, then he starts convulsing, came back in about 2 minutes choking/gagging, really bad. We put him on his side and get an ambulance on the way. The rest of the gallery was evacuated and court went into recess. By time the ambulance arrives he's not breathing, only twitching and has no pulse. They do CPR, take him out to the hospital. He was revived and died later that day. Coroner's report said his brainstem was damaged, his skull was broken, and brain herniated through break in his skull. The Granddad was interviewed by national police who have jurisdiction of courts. He said that he'd been planning that for days, he felt no remorse, said if he had time he would have killed the attorneys too. It also came out that the Granddad was in my country's mob back in the day, had 40 years in prison prior for drowning someone in petrol and lighting their corpse on fire. He was suspected but not confirmed to be involved in several other high-profile murders. He was charged with murder, conspiracy, contempt of court, and 2x simple battery for the attorneys. He was found not guilty of everything except contempt of court, to which he was originally sentenced to 4 years but it was reduced to terminal probation with home confinement due to his health. So it didn't really happen today. It was actually last night, but the embarrassment and the shame is being felt right now. A bit of backstory: my friends and I got super wasted last night. My best friend, 21M, and I, 21F, were both super wasted and high. Eventually one thing led to another, and within a moment of catching each other's eye I leaned in and kissed him. Even in his super wasted state he stopped me and the look on his face was nothing but shock. He left right after and we haven't talked since. Now I'm just sad and angry at myself for potentially destroying the best thing to ever happen to me. 16 years of friendship and more than a decade of crushing on him have gone down the drain. I don't even know what to tell him the next time we meet. That is, if we ever meet. Now I'm just sitting in despair wondering how I could have been so stupid. TLDR, my best friend and I were super wasted and high last night and I eventually kissed him. He stopped me and left right afterwards. I wish I could change what I did. I've crushed on him for the longest time and it all just came out in that kiss last night. 16 years of friendship down the drain. Haven't even texted him today after the hangover. It used to be fairly rare for me to get asked if I was an employee of a business I was in. I'm pretty sure I can count on one hand the number of times it happened before the pandemic hit. But now, I've been mistaken for an employee 3 times in the last week, and I'm reasonably sure it's because I'm wearing a mask. Around here, most, if not all of the employers are mandating everyone wear masks. The public, well, not so much. Just yesterday I had to go from the gym straight to the grocery store. So I'm in my gym clothes and mask, trying to dodge around the folks who aren't paying attention to their surroundings, when a guy yells at me, "Hey, where can I find X?" I looked at him, confused why he'd be asking me, when I'm clearly in gym clothes with a purse and everything. The one good thing about the encounter is Buddy recognized his mistake almost immediately and apologized. At least that encounter ended positively. I'm worried that it's not going to always be the case. I'm still really flipped up about this, so this is a brief overview. Once more time has passed and things are not confidential, I'll go into more detail. During the last 10 days in Colorado and California, 14 dispensaries have been robbed. Myself and my Army vet partner were bum-rushed by 3 armed men Thursday night. I tried to draw my weapon twice, but was physically stopped both times. We were held at gunpoint for 9 minutes while they raided our store, took our cell phones, and my car. Then locked us in an office. Luckily the office has its own entrance and panic button. Ellie was on scene 2 minutes after we hit the button. No one was hurt. Friday, I was able to track my phone using Google. I found it in the car. Today I was told that physical evidence was recovered from the scene. Hopefully arrests will be made. The point of this is that I feel I got complacent at my post and allowed 3 guys to rush me and my partner. Video shows there is nothing we could have done. But it doesn't change the way I feel. Watch your backs out there, everyone. On July 17, 1918, the Romanovs were murdered in Yekaterinburg at a basement along with 4 royal assistants by the Bolsheviks. They were buried next to a road in an unmarked grave, but 2 of the children were taken some feet away to confuse investigators. But since the Soviets were known for the propaganda and deceptions, people were very skeptical about the assassinations. This gave rise to theories about the escape of certain members of the royal family like Maria, Alexei, but mostly importantly Anastasia. Countless people claimed to be members of the royal family, among which Anna Anderson stood out. She became very famous in the world and was almost a celebrity. Many people believed her faithfully, but many others stated she was a con and a liar. Nevertheless, for nearly 40 years her popularity skyrocketed. However, the mystery was partially solved in 1979 when the bodies were found in the area of Yekaterinburg. But given that the Soviet Union was still in power, so the case froze until its fall in 1991. That's when they were exhumed and DNA testing corroborated they were the remains of 5 of the Romanovs and their 4 assistants. Among which was Anastasia, which destroyed Anna Anderson's claim. But 2 bodies remained missing. Maria and Alexei, which again have rise to new theories about their escape and survival. But in 2007 their burned bones were found nearby and were confirmed to be the remains of the last 2 missing Romanovs. So finally, after nearly 90 years, the Romanov riddle was solved. Here there's a video with the details of the executions and the life of Anna Anderson and how she tricked many people for quite a few years. Also I left some links with further information on how the DNA testings were conducted. Some were done with samples from the British monarchs. My dad is a bit of a clean freak and insists I keep cleaning even after everything is put where it's supposed to be. On one particularly he said this: "If something is mine, put it in my room." Not particularly bad, until you realize that he leaves half-finished drinks all over the house, as well as leaving his phone, watch, and earbuds lying around. So, for the next couple months, I would stack half-finished pop cans up on his dresser and bedside table, and put his phone and things slightly out of view, so it would take a couple minutes to find them. Nothing major, but just annoying enough. After a couple months, he let up and stopped being so strict. Obligatory. This wasn't today, it was 5 years ago, but I'm still cringing. When I first started at university I made a friend who I would run into quite often. And on this day I ran into him off campus walking through the city center. He was walking while linking arms with a girl who was quite small, definitely under 5 foot tall. She had a cartoon backpack on, a matching umbrella, and pigtail braids with plastic baubles at the end. School had just let out, so there were lots of kids around her age being walked home by siblings. I didn't want to take up too much of his time while he was walking with her, but I went over to say hey and we talked for a bit. She stayed quiet and smiled the whole time. Obviously nothing unusual for young kids. Anyway, I tried to involve her in the conversation by asking, "So, is this your little sister?" They looked at each other confused and slightly panicked, then looked back to me. It was not. It was his flatmate. They were on a date. My brain went blank out of sheer embarrassment, but I'm pretty sure I apologized before turning around and walking in the complete opposite direction. That's definitely the fastest I've ruined a date, and I wasn't even on it. DL. Doctor, I assumed that the quiet short girl my friend was linking arms with was his little sister. It was his flatmate who he was dating. My comment likely extinguished the romantic spark by the way they reacted. Disclaimer that this happened some months ago, but I still feel bouts of humiliation and anxiety whenever I think about it. I was working on research at an Asian country that I'll keep a mystery here out of fear of giving away too much info. Every day, I would walk from our house to the office with a backpack and dressed somewhat nicely, but never too formally, so I had some freedom to wear fairly cute outfits. One of these outfits included the cutest maxi skirt that I picked up and bartered for at the local market. It was a double-layered skirt where the outer layer was this see-through tulle fabric and the underskirt was just a solid, somewhat slippery fabric. One day I walked to the office in this skirt and a blouse, as well as my regular backpack that rested just above the top of my butt and was full of books and my laptop. Now I need to tell you that I at times went commando in this country because it was so hot and my underwear would feel unpleasant sometimes. I think I also read somewhere that humidity plus consuming a lot of sugars and carbs, which I did in this country, could lead to a greater risk of yeast infections, and that I could counter this by going commando once in a while, as I'm pretty paranoid about getting any sort of infection while abroad. I thought it would be okay to go commando in my double-layered maxi skirt. It was most definitely not okay. I'd if the ladies here might know what I am talking about, but sometimes, when you're wearing a skirt or a dress under a backpack, the motion of walking plus the weight of the backpack causes the fabric to ride up, so you always end up having to pull it down. I thought I'd be safe given the skirt was a maxi, long, skirt. I was not. Because the backpack ended up causing the underskirt to ride up all the way up to my butt, and I didn't even realize it because the see-through outer tulle layer stayed put. After a while of walking, I started to notice a lot of stares. I normally already get this as a foreigner, but this time people were snickering and guys were smiling in a really weird way. One guy yelled something that sounded like pandy mixed with the local language, but I didn't think much of it at first. I must have walked almost 2 miles or so before I decided to check myself to see if something was amiss, before I realized that my bare ass was bright and exposed for everyone to see. Now this town was very conservative, which is why I often wore maxi skirts and dresses, and there were a lot of regulars stationed in the same place every day on my route. Needless to say, I changed my route entirely after that day and never wore the cursed tulle skirt again. DL, Dr. Mooned a small conservative Asian town for 2 miles. Many old ladies were scandalized. Many old men were wondering when's the next show. Preface: I live in Canada and weed is legal. Story: yesterday I went to the dollar store in my neighborhood, which opens at 10 a.m. It was finally a nice day after a week straight of hot weather, so I decided to walk there. When I got to the store at 10:30, the store was still locked, and upon looking into the store, all the lights were off. Since it was a nice day, I decided to sit at the random picnic table that was under a tree in the parking lot to see if someone would show up to open shop. At this point, I also decided that smoking some weed would make the wait a lot more enjoyable, so I rolled myself a joint and sat back. While sitting around minding my own business, I see a total of 10 plus people come and go after discovering that the store was closed. One, in particular, was this lady that decided to wait in her car, somewhat close to where I was sitting. After 5 minutes of waiting in her car, she hangs out the window yelling at me to stop smoking weed and open the store. And that she couldn't believe how an employee would just sit around smoking weed and not open the store when it was supposed to be open. I'm just sat pretty confused, read, very high, and I just yell back, "Lady, I don't work here. Calm down." She huffed up but just decided to drive away. Added to add, and even if I did work at this store, no way am I going to sit in front of the store and smoke weed. I be a pothead, but I'm not dumb. It happened quite often that servers or cashier gave me the wrong change. No big deal. I tell them and they correct it. Though some people get an attitude about it. Like in this story. I was out at a local restaurant. The meal was awesome. The bill was about €20. Can't recall the exact amount. What I recall is that I had a €10 bill, €5 bill and a €50 bill in my wallet, as well as some coins. As I was paying, I put the €50 bill on the table. The waitress put the change on the table and wished me a good day, then left. I put the money in my wallet and noticed something was off. She gave me change and didn't take the €50. I went in and told her there was a mistake with the change. She got an attitude and stated it is policy not to do change corrections after the transaction is done. Cue malicious compliance. I smiled at her and nodded. She was a bit confused at that. I like to think she was expecting me to discuss it with her. I just went out. I came back a week later and was holed up by the manager. He told me he saw the footage of my exchange with the waitress after he found out that the register was missing cash. Told me it was not my fault. The waitress made a few mistakes, yes, it happened often with her. There really was this policy and I found the flaw with it. The policy was changed. Now the waitresses have to take the bill first, hold it in hand while counting out the change, and then can put it in the wallet they carry. The waitress was let go as she messed up quite often. I work at a place that requires mask for entry. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal. It's a city mandate and we were providing free ones anyway, but few people still felt the need to make a fuss about it. After giving away thousands of masks, we ran out. It was either bring your own or you can't enter. As the day went by, we turned many people away for having no mask, but one guy that arrived had a response no one else had, when informed about the rule. He just looked around on the ground side to side, found an old used mask, probably left by previous customer cause throwing away garbage is hard apparently, put it on and proceeded to walk in the store wearing a mask. So this was a couple hours ago and it still shocks me until now. I work in reservations for a third-party hotel website and I get this call. She was all nice and I thought, wow, great. After getting her room type and preferences and answering her questions, I proceed to get her a room. At $91 before tax and fees. After getting all the necessary information from her, we get on the cancellation policy and I tell her it is non-refundable and she went absolutely ballistic. She demanded I give her the rate for $91 and make it refundable. After telling her that we cannot do that, she went for her trump card. I want to speak to your manager. At that point I was getting flustered. I asked her why. Karen, this is bad customer service. I'm getting upset here because this is a crappy situation. Let me talk to your manager. As per policy, we only follow our rates and policy. I informed her that it would be useless as she would get the same answer as I have given her. She cannot get the room for $91 and have it refundable. She then went on demanding for names and location, and per policy I can only give her my first name and my general area. That was not enough. After getting berated for 15 minutes straight, I managed to get a word out and inform her to call this number to get the hotel manager to book her a room with the same rate and refundable. This is actually against policy, but at this point I don't have a way out and she wouldn't hang up. She took the number down and still demanded to talk to my manager so she can issue a complaint about the bad customer service she experienced. I've had enough at this point and my manager refusing to take the call to inform her that per the policy we cannot grant her request. So I put her on hold and transferred her to customer service. I apologize for the poor CS rep that had to deal with her, but that was the only way out that my TL informed me. So yeah, everything was going swell and then my first ever Karen ruined my perfect day and destroyed my concentration. Background: I worked in a budget store about 2 years ago. Like most places, we have music playing in the background. We would get a USB posted to us every couple of months with popular songs at the time, except between October to January. We just had a basic system, so we don't have any way to see what songs are on it. They're always the clean versions. Cast: me, Karen. Karen jumps out of nowhere already aggressive. Who controls the music? Me, I guess. Is it too loud? Karen: no, it said a rude thing. Me: I'm sorry about that, must have slipped through the cracks. Can I ask what it was so I can beware of it? But unfortunately I can't skip the song. Karen: what do you mean you can't skip it? Me explains to deaf ears. Karen: that's stupid, you should be able to skip. What if kids hear it? Me: can I ask what was rude please? Me getting annoyed now. Karen: they alluded to a threesome. What if kids asked what a threesome is? Note didn't actually say threesome. Me: well, that not much else I can do then. Turn the volume down if comes on again. They're about 1,000 song and we should get USB in a couple of weeks, so the song might not come on again. She left in a huff saying she's got to head office. Didn't hear anything back. Sorry, it's not that satisfying, I was ridiculous. Original. Last night I got a minute to cruise the local job boards. I could move off the audit and make a little more doing housekeeping for any other hotel in the area, or stay on audit and make $400 more per month. That alone is enough to leave. Free market, yada yada. The last few nights make a good illustration of how backwards this place is. My last check-in arrived late last night, and immediately came back down to report that their tub wasn't draining. That was my last room, 100% full, can't relocate them. Offered to plunge it, they said it was too late, they just wanted to go to sleep and get a partial refund for not being able to shower or bathe. I said I absolutely agree, that's warranted, the manager has to approve it, but we'll address this. I said that because at either of my 2 previous hotels that would have happened. I text the GM at 6 a.m., because the one time I reached out to them at 11:20 the responses were very rude, and concluded with a, sorry I go to bed at 9. I don't get a reply until minutes before shift change saying no refund. I reply asking how many points to give them then, and hear nothing until after my shift has ended. Regardless of what's on the time cards, we get paid for the time on the schedule. Thankfully my departing AGM comes in a little early, Tells me give them an extra 25% in points, basically worthless, then agrees that giving no refund whatsoever is crazy. Tonight the dirty laundry is piled on the laundry room floor. One bin could theoretically just need dried, but apart from the stuff left in the washers and dryer I don't really know. None of it is really clean though, because on Friday morning I asked about a 55-gallon garbage can for collecting trash without spilling garbage juice. I was told to use a laundry basket and clean it afterwards. I'm out. Hi, I'm usually a lurker here and I'm on mobile so format, but this happened last year. I'm not sure if it goes here, so please tell me if it would fit somewhere else. So I volunteer at a second-hand retail shop and some of the stuff we get is retro stuff, so it's obviously more than the usual $2 to $3. The jeans in question were $6, so still pretty cheap. M equals me, C1 equals customer 1, C2 equals customer 2, co equals co-worker. Me after ringing up the transaction, that's 15.00 today, thank you. C1 hands me a 20 without saying anything. Me completes the transaction and gets her change and then hand it to her. C1 that's the wrong change. CW it's meant to be 15 and change hun. Me looks at the computer seeing that I did give the correct change and then looking at the jeans price tag again, the jeans are $6, that's why it's that much. I then pointed out it was in the retro section, that's why it cost that much. C1 and 2 complained about the price and then asked for the manager to return the jeans. It's not that interesting but just something that I remember cause I got anxious that I was wrong. Just please check price tags people even in second-hand shops. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee. Cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about DJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ, and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. New and on mobile. So I volunteer at a second-hand retail store, and so obviously most of the stuff is quite cheap. This has happened to me a few times where a customer will come up to the counter and end up ringing 100-ish in clothing, and the last or one of the last items will end having lost their price, and then when we say something like $2 to $3 they'll complain that it should be free because of all this stuff they bought, like "Hon, we didn't force you to buy all this stuff, I'm sorry but I cannot give you Nike shorts for free, they're dirt cheap already." Made an account just for this cause it's so strange. Here's the cast. Me, a mute girl who's apparently decently attractive. To attract neckbeard at GF, my girlfriend, loves anime and cosplay. NB, neckbeard, overweight, with a large neckbeard and anime t-shirt. Now, the story. My best friend is turning 18 in just a few days, so me and my GF wanted to get him a figurine of a girl he liked from an anime. So, we checked a few places, didn't find much, but eventually my girlfriend left me to go ask a store cashier. Then, I saw NB walking up to me. I waved, cause I'm kinda polite, and he apparently saw that as a chance to move in. NB, hey! Glad to see you appreciate anime too. What's your favorite? I shrugged, cause I'm almost certain this guy doesn't know now to sign. NB, don't know? Well, maybe I can tell you my favorites over lunch. How about it? It was at this moment my girlfriend came back, the figurine in hand. GF, hey! I got it. Wanna look for anything else, or just wanna go? NB, hey! Who are you? GF, oh, I'm GF, her girlfriend. Who are you? NB, I'm NB, and I was taking her to lunch. GF, oh really? She kinda gave him this suspicious glare. Not too sure how to describe it. But it was like she was calling his bluff. NB, humph. It seems you don't trust me to be a gentleman around your little lady. Good day, madams. With that, he stormed out. GF and I just looked at each other before paying and leaving. As an animal lover, I have always instilled in my children the need to value animals' lives as much as we do humans. I pick up snails that have found their way onto a busy walkway and place them on the grass. I pick up frogs who have wandered too far away from the pond and are stuck drying out in the hot weather. I'll feed and care for strays and so on. One things I do frequently, is brake for birds in the road. I often get the usual "oh they always fly away at the last minute" from my mum. Today? Not the case. So I was driving down a long but low-speed road at around 15 to 20 miles per hour. A flock of pigeons were enjoying some crumbs on a speed bump in the road. As I was approaching, most of them flew away. I was about to brake and the last one flew up. But instead of carrying on to fly up, it suddenly changed direction and flew right at my tire. Or should I say under. The expected bump of the car and thud sound quickly came, followed by my daughter screaming, "Mum, you've just killed a bird. That's cruel. You should have stopped." I tried so hard to explain that there was no way I could have avoided the situation and that it upset me also. Now she thinks I'm a heartless bird killer and won't speak to me. She's 13. TL, Doctor, my daughter thinks I am a pigeon murderer because I accidentally flattened one. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the EMTs got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. Today I received an email from my credit card company asking me to take a 10-minute survey in exchange for a 5 reward. With nothing better to do, I clicked the link and started answering questions. The survey was mostly about what type of exclusive special events I would be interested in this COVID world, and if I would be willing to do group events if there were proper safety procedures in place. Other than that, there were the normal questions such as household income, gender and occupation. I finished the survey, and came to the thank you screen. I had 3 choices of how to receive my 5. 1. 5 Amazon gift card. 2. 5 Starbucks gift card. 3. I don't want a gift card. I chose option 3 because I didn't want a gift card, I wanted a statement credit. Well, apparently that wasn't an option, and after choosing this, I was thanked for my feedback and told to have a great day. I tried to go back to this screen, but there was no way to change my selection, I was locked in. I gave up 10 minutes of my life answering boring questions all just to be told to have a great day. The one upside is I did it during work, so I technically got paid, I suppose. DL, Doctor, took a survey promising a 5 reward but accidentally opted out of the reward thinking it would result in a statement credit. Edit due to comments, the email never said the 5 reward would be a gift card. This particular company has given me a statement credit in the past for feedback. Please don't use my story anywhere, English is my primary language but on mobile, etc. My so and I just moved to our area a month or so ago. It was a horrible and rough move and it has been good since, but getting here has been miserable. So naturally, we frequent the closest chain grocery store, Corporate structure, important. For stuff we don't find at the local farm stands, it is usually cheaper and higher quality than the chains for some things in our area. 2 days ago I bought some shredded meat to make street tacos for a few friends we were having over. Yesterday, we walk in the store, I needed 2 items I thought I had in my pantry, but since we moved I couldn't find them, and so I are doing our loop around the store and end up getting in the checkout line. A manager approached us and asked if we had purchased this meat the day before. Thinking about how I didn't actually put the meat in the fridge, it struck me that yes, we had purchased the meat but left it at the store. I answered, oh shoot, yes, we did, and probably walked out without the meat. Manager lady chuckled and said, follow me, we are going to get you another pack of meat, you already paid, just carry it out. Guys, we don't go out often. We just moved here. This manager took our satisfaction so seriously that she recognized us, in spite of our masks, and approached us to correct our mistake of leaving our purchase in a corporate store, without having to go through the exchange process so well associated with corporate stores. Wow. I will be getting her name. We were in a rush, my fault for forgetting, and giving her recognition to her higher-ups, without details in case we were supposed to go through the exchange thing. I am familiar with corporate structures, so no worries. We were so touched and it gave us such warm fuzzies after everything we went through to get into our new house that my soul and I were just astounded. There is good in the world and it is so nice to get to experience it every now and again. TLDR, just had to shout out to the wonderful local grocery store manager that fixed our, but mostly my, dumb error with kindness. Obligatory, not me but my wife. I, 30M, was taking a nap today as I worked third shift. It was the middle of the day, and my wife, 29F, usually entertains our daughter in the living room on the other side of the house while I'm napping before work. I was awoken immediately out of a deep sleep by blood-curdling screaming, the screams of our 17-month-old daughter. The something is deeply wrong scream, the I'm in pain scream. All parents know this distinctive scream. I jumped out of bed and ran into the kitchen where the ear-shattering noise was coming from. I find my wife apologizing over and over to her daughter. "Mommy is so sorry, Mommy didn't mean to," is all she kept saying. I kept asking what happened over and over, and when the situation started to die down, and the pain was subsiding, my wife squeaked out our daughter, was trying to feed me part of her cookie, and I thought the end of her finger was a chocolate chip. After a few more minutes of whimpering, our daughter was perfectly fine, albeit a little hesitant about sharing snacks with Mommy for the rest of the day. Dr. I was woke up from our toddler screaming, found out her mom tried to eat her. Edit, deleted repetitive word. This was 2 years ago when I worked as a bellboy in a 5-star hotel. We use an app to call taxis if there aren't any waiting. A guest asked me to call a taxi for him. 5 minutes later, a taxi driver accepts the request and calls me, but he mistook my hotel for another branch. He told me to request another one, so I do it. Taxi drivers in Hong Kong have quite a low reputation. The guest sees me and starts shouting at me about how he asked me 5 minutes ago and asks me why I'm only doing it now. My manager just apologizes and I couldn't explain. Even though the manager knows what happened and told me to ignore it, I still feel frustrated at being shouted at for no reason. So I work graveyard at a convenience store. A typical night occurs, then I go to lunch. I come back and the store manager has this scared look on her face while another store manager says to me she just got a gun pulled out on her. I asked what happened. She said I was ringing up this couple and they were charging it to a debit card. It declined and I asked them to try it again. I got distracted a little bit and took my eyes off of them. That's when they grabbed the items and ran out the door. Then I chased after them and they got into a car, so I opened up the door and one of the guys in there raised his hands and pointed something at me. So I backed off and they peeled out. I asked the other manager where he was at and he said she sent me to lunch too. I even asked if she wanted me to stay until you got back, but she said no, I got it. So now she may lose her job for running after these crackheads and she could have gotten killed for running up to the car. The moral of the story: saving merchandise from theft just isn't worth it. It's best to just let them go and report as much as you can to the PDs. The funny thing is we called the PDs and they never came. SMH. Awesome one this morning. Last week, client submits ticket that she cannot send email from her Yahoo to her work account. Why she needs to do so, no idea, don't care, long as it's not the other way around. We ran a message trace and found it had been marked as spam, added to allow list, figured it was fixed. User emailed back in, she got one email to go through but no others will. Ran another message trace, lots of failed messages with one success in the middle. Looked over to find out why. She had misspelled her own last name and her work email address. Not once, but at least 10 times. Not a typo or a random misspelling each time, the exact same misspelling every time. This isn't a bad story actually. Cast, names changed, me Katie. I'm walking out of my local supermarket where I bought myself some breakfast. I use the self-checkout line because I don't like unnecessary interaction. I'm actually on my way to my job, which is clearly stated by the name of the deli I work at emblazoned across my chest. Katie, excuse me, do y'all carry extra masks? I left mine at home. Me, no ma'am, I don't work here. Katie, oh, I'm so sorry, your mask just looked like a worker's mask. I just look down at my logo and nod, and I leave. Super short story. Not very interesting either, but I was so excited to post my first true little tale. The other one was actually an I do work here lady. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick, he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones, lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. I'm young and statistically not as risk for this virus. I do not live with any at-risk individuals, just my parents, and they are hardly taking this seriously. I'm not affected by this virus whatsoever, but I recognize the importance of taking this pandemic seriously. Yet barely half the customers that walk into my workplace can be bothered to pull the mask up over their nose. I sanitize things constantly and try to keep things as clean as possible, but it feels like nobody is taking anything seriously. Every day people try and walk in without a mask despite the large "no mask no entry" sign, and my manager can't catch them all. There's barely any social distancing. I just about had it when I had to get some shopping for new work clothes today and found out that other businesses aren't taking it nearly as seriously as mine, and I thought my work was bad. Nobody in this bloody country cares about this virus. Every other first world country has this under control besides America. I don't know why I try anymore, it just leaves me feeling frustrated and powerless. I'm just waiting for this pandemic to infect everyone at this point. So this happened about 7 years ago, I know. It was today, but hey, here's a story. I used to go to this all-boy sleepover camp when I was a kid because my parents thought it was a good idea to get me outside with other boys. I did not like sleeping away from home and was scared the whole time. One night, I had to use the bathroom and stepped outside to do my business by a tree which was downhill from my cabin. When I finish, I must have taken a wrong turn and I ended up in another group's cabin. I go over to my bunk and see another kid sleeping there. So I start freaking out and having an existential crisis because I thought that I didn't exist and I start crying because I don't know what to do. Fortunately, one of the group leaders wakes up to the sound of me crying and asks me what's wrong. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I tell him that I'm supposed to be in that spot. He tells me that I'm in the wrong cabin, and I shamefully walk back to my cabin. Doctor, walk into the wrong cabin, have an existential crisis and cringe at it 7 years later.